He pulled me out of the darkness, held me like I was his light. But when I finally trusted him, he threw me back into the shadows. But then, I made sure he'd never see the light again. I never thought someone like him could find someone like me. Back then, I was barely existing. Not living, not breathing. Just drifting through the days like a ghost of who I used to be. My world had already shattered into 1,000 pieces when my family disowned me for choosing a life they didn't agree with. I was struggling through college, juggling 2 jobs, barely able to afford rent in a dingy basement apartment with mold on the ceiling and loneliness in the walls. That's when he found me. Liam. He was everything I wasn't. Confident, charming, with a magnetic presence that pulled people in without effort. The kind of man who smiled and the whole room leaned closer. I met him at the coffee shop I worked night shifts at. He ordered black coffee and stared at me like I was the only person in the world who mattered. "You okay?" he asked me one night. "You look like you're carrying an entire storm inside." No one had asked me that in years. And certainly not with eyes that gentle. At first, I ignored him. I had nothing to give. Not love. Not trust. Not even small talk. But he didn't walk away. Night after night, he kept showing up. Sometimes he'd bring pastries I couldn't afford. Other times, he'd leave a note on the counter when I was too busy to talk. "You're stronger than you think. The darkness won't last forever. You deserve to be seen." And slowly, I began to believe him. He never pushed. Never asked for more than I could give. Until one night, when I broke down crying in the back room after a customer screamed at me. He waited, sat on the floor with me, held my shaking hands and said, "You don't have to do this alone. Let me be your light." And I let him. I opened the locked door of my heart, even though every part of me screamed to keep it shut. I told him about my family, about the pain, about the emptiness that lived inside me like a parasite. He never flinched. He held me closer. Days turned into weeks. Then months. He made me laugh again. He cooked dinner in my cramped kitchen. He told me I was beautiful in the mornings when I looked like a mess. And for the first time in years, I thought, maybe, just maybe, I was safe. He said he loved me. He promised I was his world. And I believed him. God help me, I believed every word. But I didn't know that while I was falling in love. He was calculating every move. I should have noticed the cracks. The way Liam would go silent whenever I talked about long-term plans. The strange tension that lingered after certain phone calls he'd take in the hallway. Or how he always steered the conversation away from his past, his family, his friends, his life before me. At first, I thought it was just emotional boundaries. Maybe he'd been hurt before, too. Maybe he needed time, like I did. But then small things started to disappear from my apartment. First, my favorite necklace, a cheap silver chain my grandmother gave me. Then a few $100s I'd stashed behind the cereal boxes for emergencies. My tips from the cafe. I was always so tired. I thought maybe I'd misplaced them. Maybe I was losing my mind. And Liam? He always had a soft smile and warm hands when I brought it up. "You're stressed, baby. You're overworking yourself." He'd kiss my forehead, hand me takeout, distract me with warmth and affection. He made me question myself. Gaslight me. And I let him. Then came the day he asked me to co-sign a lease. "A fresh start for both of us," he said. "A brighter apartment, bigger windows, new beginnings." I didn't even hesitate. He'd been my light when I was lost. How could I not trust him? I signed the papers. I moved everything I owned, which wasn't much, into that new place. But the moment the ink dried, Liam began to change. He stopped calling during the day, would disappear for hours and return with vague excuses. The warmth in his eyes cooled, the softness in his voice replaced by sharp, passive-aggressive jabs. "You wouldn't understand. You're too emotional. Stop acting like a victim all the time." The man who once held me through panic attacks now rolled his eyes when I cried. The one who promised I was safe made me feel like I was walking on glass. And still, I stayed. Because he'd made me believe I was hard to love. That no one else would ever want someone so broken, so damaged. That he was the only one who had ever seen beauty in the mess I was. Until the day I came home early from work. And everything shattered. I pushed open the door to our apartment and stopped cold. A woman's laugh echoed from the bedroom. Her clothes were scattered across the floor, alongside mine. And there he was, lying in bed with her, his arm draped lazily across her waist. Like it meant nothing. Like I meant nothing. He didn't even look surprised. Just smiled. Took you long enough to figure it out. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just stood there, frozen, while the girl looked at me like I was the intruder. I left quietly, packed only what I could carry in a backpack, and vanished into the night. I stayed at a friend's place for a few days, someone I hadn't talked to in a long time. I told her everything. And for the first time, someone looked me in the eyes and said, "You weren't crazy. He made you doubt yourself on purpose." That's when it started. The shift. The quiet rage. The cold clarity. He thought he had broken me. He thought I would disappear like all the others. But Liam had no idea what kind of storm he'd awakened. There's something terrifying about realizing you were never loved. That every smile, every word, every touch was just strategy. Liam didn't rescue me from the darkness out of love. He dragged me into his spotlight to feed his ego, to feel powerful, to play God over someone who was already wounded. He wasn't a savior. He was a hunter. And I was the perfect prey. But not anymore. I spent the next few weeks rebuilding in silence. No dramatic confrontations. No teary texts begging for answers. I ghosted him the same way he ghosted my worth. While he slept soundly beside another woman, thinking I'd vanished in defeat, I was learning, studying, planning. He didn't know that I had access to the lease documents, that the apartment was under both our names, and legally, I still had rights. He didn't realize I'd started saving every receipt, every message, every transaction we'd ever made together, things I had once ignored in blind trust. He'd mocked me for being quiet, but that was his first mistake. He forgot that silence isn't weakness. It's strategy. I reached out to an old friend of his, someone he once bragged about screwing over in a business deal. Let's call him Shane. Turns out, Liam had quite a trail behind him. Manipulated investors, lied about assets, drained accounts, and left partners in financial ruin. But no one ever reported him. He was too smooth, too charming. And his victims were too ashamed. Until me. I wasn't afraid of shame anymore. I started small. I opened a new bank account and quietly transferred my remaining funds. I went back to my coffee shop job, working night shifts again, where he first found me. But this time, I wasn't a girl looking for a savior. I was a woman building a weapon. With Shane's help, I traced Liam's web of lies, his shell companies, fake accounts, the scams he pulled on others. I gathered everything. Printed every receipt. Recorded every shady phone call. Even found a few women he'd done the same thing to. One of them, Maya, had almost taken her own life after he destroyed her. She joined me. So did another. And another. We weren't victims anymore. We were a coalition. And Liam? Still clueless. He posted smiling selfies with his new girl, called her his light. Just like he called me. Same script. Same trap. And I watched. Quietly. Patiently. Every like, every comment, every lie he spread was fuel. Until the day I walked back into that apartment with 2 lawyers and a court order. He was mid-lunch, barefoot, confused, standing in boxers with a sandwich in hand. "What the hell are you doing here?" I handed him the notice. Calm. Cold. "You have 48 hours to vacate. I'm filing for damages and fraud. You'll hear from my attorney." He laughed. Until he saw the papers. Until he saw the copies of every scam, every theft, every forgery. until he realized I had receipts, and I wasn't alone. He screamed, threw the sandwich, called me names, begged, threatened, but I didn't blink. The power he once had over me shattered. He had built his empire on the backs of broken women, but now, those same women were tearing it down, brick by brick. And it was only the beginning. Because he took my trust. He took my peace. He took my light. So now, I was going to take everything he ever built and burn it to the ground. They say revenge is a dish best served cold. I disagree. Revenge, when it comes from pain this deep, is a slow burn, measured, calculated, and quietly devastating. After the legal eviction, Liam spiraled faster than I expected. He tried to charm his way out of it, of course. First with me, then with the new girl. But the moment she saw the evidence, the copies of his past lies, the screenshots of him using her name to access credit cards, she vanished without a word. He was left alone, and the silence began to eat him alive. Meanwhile, I stayed silent publicly. No dramatic social media posts. No angry rants. Just silence, which only made him more paranoid. He started messaging me from different numbers. Emails. Late night voicemails. Drunk and desperate. You don't understand what you're doing. You'll ruin my life. I didn't mean to hurt you. But the thing is, he did mean it. Every manipulation, every lie, every moment he twisted the knife, it was all part of his game. And I wasn't playing anymore. I filed the lawsuit quietly. Financial fraud. Emotional abuse. Coercion. I had statements from 3 other women, screenshots, signed testimonies, and Shane backing me up. We didn't go to the police. Not yet. This was civil first. I wanted him to bleed slowly, financially, emotionally, socially. He tried to countersue. But he had nothing. No job. No income. No reputation left that could be salvaged. Then came the day his landlord called me. Yes, his new landlord. Apparently, he'd used my name and credit score to get into his new apartment. I had the proof. I pressed charges. And just like that, his lease was revoked. Another eviction. Another crack in his perfect facade. Still, he thought he could win. Thought he could twist the narrative like always. So he started telling people I was a bitter ex, that I was obsessed, that I was trying to ruin his future. But what he didn't know was, I'd already reached out to every person he ever worked with. Every investor. Every woman he dated. Even some of his old professors from business school. I didn't slander him. I just shared facts. Documents. Screenshots. Bank records. Let them draw their own conclusions. One by one, they dropped him. The walls of his empire, his fragile illusion of power, collapsed. But it wasn't enough. Not yet. I wanted him to feel it the way I did. Alone. Discarded. Used. I contacted a journalist. A small-time blogger who specialized in financial abuse and online dating scams. She listened to my story. Read through every file. And she asked, "Can I publish this?" I gave her permission. Within a week, her article exploded across platforms. The charmer who conned hearts and bank accounts. It wasn't just about me. It was about all of us. Maya, Shane, the other women. The trail of destruction Liam had left behind. He tried to deny it, of course. But the receipts spoke louder than his lies. The job offer stopped. His savings were frozen due to ongoing investigations. Friends ghosted him. His face, once the mask of charisma, was now the symbol of manipulation. And I wasn't hiding anymore. I got my job back at the cafe. Finished college. Started a small online community for survivors of emotional abuse. People began reaching out, thanking me, telling me I'd given them the strength to walk away too. But none of it felt like victory. Not yet. Because Liam still had one thing left. His pride. And I was about to take that. Pride. It's the last thing a man like Liam clings to when everything else falls apart. He could lose the money, the women, the attention, but as long as he still had the illusion of control, of superiority, of, they just don't get me, he could breathe. So I took that next. It wasn't dramatic, not loud, not explosive. It was precise. After the article went viral, more people came forward, investors, former colleagues, even an ex-roommate who claimed Liam had stolen rent money and framed him for it. Each message was another thread in the unraveling of the life Liam had stitched together with lies. But Liam did what predators always do. He tried to reposition himself as the victim. He posted a long, tear-stained video online, said he'd been battling mental illness, that he never meant to hurt anyone, that this was all a witch hunt by bitter people who couldn't move on. For a moment, I'll admit, I wavered. He looked broken. But then I remembered that night I walked in and found him in bed with someone else. The smug look on his face. The way he said, "Took you long enough to figure it out." That wasn't illness. That was cruelty. Calculated. Cold. So I responded, but not the way he expected. I didn't clap back. I didn't even mention his name. I posted my own video, quiet, raw, honest. I talked about emotional abuse, about coercive control, about the red flags I ignored, and the slow erosion of identity I suffered under someone who claimed to love me. I didn't accuse. I explained. And people listened. The contrast between us was undeniable. He screamed for pity, I offered truth. And the world could tell. His video was removed for violating platform policies. Mine was shared in survivor forums, mental health pages, and educational platforms across social media. I didn't just take his pride. I replaced it with something real. Something helpful. I became the voice he tried to silence. He tried, one last time, to intimidate me. He sent a letter through his new lawyer, accusing me of defamation, threatening to sue me for damages to his reputation. But the moment my lawyer responded with a 130-page binder of evidence, complete with statements, legal filings, and financial reports, silence. That was the last time I heard from Liam directly. Word got around that he left town. Some said he moved to another state. Others whispered that he changed his name and was trying to start over. I didn't care. Because he would never truly be free. Not from the truth. Not from the weight of his own sins. Not from the trail of pain he left behind. And as for me, I kept growing. My page gained followers. Survivors. Allies. People who didn't want revenge, but healing. I spoke at events, shared my story in safe spaces, and helped build a support network for others like me. The girl he once found in the shadows? She was gone. In her place stood a woman forged from betrayal and fire. I wasn't his light anymore. I was the mirror he could never look into without seeing the truth. And no matter how far he ran, he would never escape the reflection. They say justice is slow. But justice isn't always handed down in a courtroom. Sometimes, it lives in the quiet dismantling of someone's carefully constructed lie. Sometimes, it lives in the look they give their own reflection when the mask finally shatters. And that's what happened to Liam. I didn't need to see him fall in person to know he had. You can feel it when a monster loses control of their narrative. It echoes in their silence. It bleeds through the desperation in the people they used to manipulate. I remember getting a message one night from a woman named Carla. She had only dated Liam briefly after everything fell apart. She told me he had been living in a dingy one-bedroom rental outside the city. No job. Just stories. He still called himself a consultant, but everyone knew that meant unemployed. Still wore the same watch, though. Faked luxury like he faked everything else. She said he talked about me all the time. Not by name, he never gave me that power, but through bitterness. She ruined me. She obsessed over me. She made everyone hate me. But the real truth, He couldn't stop talking about me because he couldn't stop thinking about me. Not because he loved me. Because I was the only person who had ever outplayed him. Liam was used to being the final chapter in every girl's story. But I became the entire next book. And I wasn't finished writing. Carla thanked me. Said if it weren't for my video, she wouldn't have left him when the red flags started to flash. I told her she didn't owe me anything. But truthfully, it warmed something cold inside me. This was never about fame, or praise, or even revenge anymore. This was about reclamation. Reclaiming my voice, my mind, my name. Still, I'd be lying if I said I didn't enjoy hearing about his unraveling. I'd heard he tried to get a job at a mid-sized marketing firm. They ran a background check, found the article, the lawsuit, the testimonies. Rejected him before the interview even ended. Another woman, Rachel, said he tried to date her friend. Told her he was just misunderstood. She Googled him. Found everything. Blocked him instantly. Brick by brick, the tower of deception he'd built had turned into a cage. And he was trapped inside it. But my life? It blossomed. I went back to school. Got a degree in psychology with a focus on trauma recovery. I started a podcast, quiet at first, just me and a mic, but then it grew. People needed space to speak. And I gave them that space. Not once did I name Liam again. Because he no longer defined my story. He was just a plot twist. A turning point. A broken chapter in a book that kept going without him. One day, I was walking out of a bookstore downtown, arms full of self-help guides, trauma recovery journals, and my favorite dark poetry when I saw him. Liam, sitting on a bench. Alone. Gone. His eyes didn't shine anymore. He didn't see me. But I saw him. For the first time, really saw him, not through the lens of my pain or love or betrayal. Just a man. A hollow man who fed off others because he had nothing inside himself. And in that moment, I felt nothing. No rage. No sorrow. Just peace. He had taken so much from me. But I had built a life where his absence was my freedom. Where his fall wasn't my victory, just the natural result of his own rot. He destroyed himself. All I did was stop saving him. Healing isn't a straight path. There are nights I still wake up sweating, remembering the weight of his words, how sweet they sounded when they were laced with poison. There are moments I still hear his laugh, the one he used to charm and manipulate, echoing in the corners of my mind. But then I remember, that laugh doesn't belong to a man who won. It belongs to a man who lost everything. I never confronted Liam that day. I saw him outside the bookstore. I didn't need to. That moment was enough. He looked like someone stuck in a world that no longer bowed to him. And that was the justice I never had to ask for. But my story didn't end there. Because I didn't just survive him, I transformed because of him. I expanded the survivor community I built. Created resources. Started support circles. Even hosted in-person workshops where people shared their stories. Shaky voices at first, then stronger. Bolder. Empowered. I turned my trauma into a map for others to escape the darkness. And through that, I found a new kind of power. It wasn't the kind that hurts. It was the kind that heals. One day, I got a message from an editor at a publishing house. She had followed my story since the original article and asked if I would consider turning it into a book, not about Liam specifically, but about emotional manipulation, the patterns, the red flags, and most importantly, the recovery. It terrified me. Not because I didn't want to share, but because I knew how many women still hadn't escaped their own Liams. And I didn't want to write it from a place of vengeance. I wanted it to be honest. So I said yes. The book poured out of me over the next year. Every chapter a scar. Every sentence a stitch. And when it hit the shelves, I didn't expect much. But it became a lifeline. I received hundreds of messages. Then thousands. Stories from strangers who said, I thought I was crazy until I read your words. He used the exact same phrases. You saved me before I lost myself. I cried reading every single one because that was when I realized Liam didn't break me. He exposed me to myself, showed me the parts I needed to reclaim, the strength I'd buried, the fire I thought I'd lost. He didn't destroy me. He revealed me. And that, perhaps, was the greatest revenge of all. Because he set out to turn me into a ghost, haunted, hollow, erased. But instead, I became the loudest voice in a silence he never imagined I'd escape. He'll spend the rest of his life looking over his shoulder, wondering when the next woman will see through him, wondering how many already have because of me. He'll scroll through social media and find my face on talk shows, book panels, podcasts, empowerment retreats. Not because I want him to see me, but because I don't care if he does. He made his name by breaking women like me. And now, my name heals them. That's not just a victory. That's a legacy. I used to think closure meant hearing, "I'm sorry." That one day Liam would show up, broken and full of regret, begging for forgiveness. That maybe then I could finally exhale. But I was wrong. Closure isn't something someone else gives you. It's something you choose when you realize their apology will never undo the damage and you don't need it to. Liam never apologized. Not once. Even after the lawsuits, the articles, the testimonies. He never admitted what he did. Because men like him don't see victims, they see tools. And when those tools break or fight back, they just move on to the next. But I didn't break. Not really. He tried to hollow me out, piece by piece, until I didn't recognize the girl in the mirror. And for a while, he succeeded. But then, I rebuilt her. Not to be who I was before him, but someone stronger. Someone wiser. Someone dangerous to people like him. People still ask me sometimes, "Do you hate him?" And the truth? No, because hate would mean he still matters. But he doesn't. He's just a chapter I no longer reread. These days, my life is full, friends who check on me, laughter that doesn't feel stolen, love that isn't conditional. Real love. The kind that doesn't ask you to shrink. I travel now, host survivor retreats across the country. Women from all walks of life come together, and for the first time, they speak without fear. We don't talk about the men who hurt us. We talk about who we are without them. We cry. We laugh. We heal. And in those rooms, I see what Liam tried to take from me, the light, the fire, the voice. But he failed. Because in trying to erase me, he made me unforgettable. One night, I got a message from a woman I didn't recognize. Just 5 words. He used to own me. Attached was a photo of Liam, older, thinner, sitting alone in a diner booth, eyes blank. She ended the message with, "He looks like a ghost now. Just thought you should know." And I smiled. Not out of satisfaction, but because I finally understood. He walked into my life thinking he could control my story. He walked out never realizing. He became a footnote in mine. So no, I didn't destroy Liam. I simply showed him what it feels like to fade. To be forgotten. To lose everything he ever used to feel powerful. And while he's left chasing shadows and rewriting lies in the dark corners of the world, I live in the light. Because I turned every second of his joy into the pain he could never escape. And that, right there, was the revenge he never saw coming.